ACX Check Part 3, Noise Floor. This week we're taking a detour from our series on macros in Audacity. We'll get back to macros in a future edition of Stuart's Audacity Tips. This is the third in a 4-part series on audiobook work, or long-form narration of any kind. Share it around. These are topics that tend to frustrate a lot of VOs. Ease someone's anxiety today. And if you got this from somebody else, join us at this URL to get future installments. So far, we've looked at 2 of the 3 ACX Check metrics, peak level and RMS. This time, we'll look at the ever-elusive noise floor. As a reminder, here's a typical output from ACX Check. The third metric is noise floor. Of all the topics related to personal studio VO recording, this one seems to cause the most discussions, not to mention how-tos and space recommendations. However, we're only going to look at how ACX Check analyzes noise floor and how you can adjust your audio if the noise floor metric doesn't pass. Noise floor refers to the amplitude of the sound your mic picks up when there's nothing making noise in your studio. At least, that's what we'd like to think. The fact is, there's always something making noise in your studio. It's impossible to have a completely silent recording space outside of a seriously expensive and nearly useless place called an anechoic chamber. Trust me, nobody wants to record in one of those places. So we do everything we can to make sure our recording space is as quiet as possible while being usable. Then we record some audio and subject it to ACX Check, hoping that we've achieved the required noise floor. And if it doesn't, we worry if the audio is going to be salvageable or if we'll have to record it again. But wait, before panicking, let's make sure we understand what ACX Check is measuring. And while we're at it, let's make sure we're not unnecessarily self-flagellating. The first rule of running ACX Check is never run ACX Check on any audio other than your final delivery candidate. If you've just finished recording and you still have more steps in your workflow like proofing, editing, and mastering, then running ACX Check is a waste of time. Don't do it. All right then, we're running ACX Check on a chapter that is fully completed, mastered, and ready. What does ACX Check actually measure to get the noise floor result? Here's what it doesn't measure: all the non-speaking areas of audio in the whole waveform. ACX Check's noise floor metric is not an average of levels below a certain amplitude. It is a measure of the average amplitude of the quietest 1/2 of a second of audio in the waveform. That just means that ACX Check finds the quietest 5/10 of a second, then tells you the average amplitude of that little section. Most likely that's going to occur in the lead-in or lead-out that are also part of the ACX specification. So here's a little secret. If your audio meets the other ACX Check metrics but fails noise floor, you can get it to pass by using the amplify effect to reduce the amplitude of the tail out just enough to satisfy the requirement, which is -60 dB. Important safety tip 1. If your noise floor is significantly higher than -60 dB, then adjusting the tail out to meet ACX specs may not result in acceptable audio for ACX's QC check, which is not all automated. So use that little secret carefully. If the noise floor is only a little bit out of spec, you can use the amplify effect to reduce the amplitude of the entire waveform so that the noise floor is acceptable. However, reducing the overall amplitude can also kick your RMS metric out of the acceptable range. As always, small adjustments are important, and run ACX Check again after any adjustment you've made. Important safety tip number 2. Never include actual silence, 0 dB of audio, as your lead-in or lead-out for ACX. This is a big tip-off that you probably have noise floor problems in your actual audio. It also sounds unnatural when your speaking voice and actual noise floor kick in after some dead silence. So that's it for the metrics included in ACX Check. But it's not quite the end of this series. Now that we have a good handle on what ACX Check is doing for us, we can expand that knowledge to help understand other tools that are out there. Next up, beyond ACX Check. Hope this helps. I'm Stuart.